Dorian Yates prefers underhanded pull downs. He doesn't like the wide grip pull downs. You want to know what my opinion is? Stay tuned. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, diet, training, supplementation. We have you covered. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. So glad you could join us on this, the 26th day of June in the year 2024. And special thanks to all of you who supported all of our work down in Alabama. We had a great time with the Whack Pack. Lee Priest joining us, Greg Valentino, John Romano, Jimmy the Bull, Mr. G, of course, Tyler, our cameraman, doing excellent work throughout the course of the weekend. A really, really good time. If you haven't already done so, check out the videos. We have some more going up over the course of the next couple of days, but they are funny. They are entertaining, and as you can imagine, pretty wacky. The full Whack Pack panel, the seminar that we had this past Friday night as part of the Body B1 Classic, is live right now on the channel in its entirety. So check it out right now at the RX Muscle YouTube channel. Let's go right to the questions. The first two questions on the show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question: what is the purpose of carb cycling? Why not just stay at the same macros in deficit?
You know, it's a good question. You know, theoretically, you could do the same macros every day. And I know people that get great results. A lot of people just use right off the Dave Palumbo Experience app. They use the template for my ketogenic diet or my lower carb version of the diet. It's a little higher than keto. And they make progress every week. They get in great shape. Other people, doesn't happen, because what happens is the metabolism kind of adapts a lot of times. So you give your body a certain amount of macros, and then it works and works and works. And then all of a sudden, maybe because you've lost weight, you need less macros or something needs to be changed. Sometimes also the body starts to acclimate to what's going on. So it adapts essentially to using less food, and it doesn't want to burn fat anymore. So in those cases, a lot of times, rather than taking away food, sometimes that doesn't solve the problem. You have to add food. So sometimes adding carbohydrates will stimulate the metabolism. Now, some people right from the very beginning will do a rotation type diet. Like I'll give some people some days of protein, fat, which no carbs, and then other days they're having carbs. And that kind of mix up kind of tricks the body, and the body it takes it much, much longer to try to adapt to something like that. And some people obviously will have, you know, they want to keep carbs in their diet the whole time, and they'll do a high day, they'll do a lower day, there'll be a middle day, and they'll vary it that way. And a lot of times that works also for an initial period of time, and then it can stop working as well. So that's why it's important that you have someone, whether it be yourself or a coach that you trust, who can make these changes given how your body's responding. If I have an athlete who hasn't, made any progress in 2 weeks, I'm going to either take away food or I might add food, or I might take away cardio, I might increase cardio. It really depends on my instincts, given the situation and how long they've been dieting. And that's where experience comes in. So the changing of macros is to keep the body guessing.
Second question, again, these first two questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. When someone is taking multiple supplements, such as Tren, Test, Deca, how do the receptors use Deca when it's not as potent as the Tren? And do they differentiate how it's used?
It's a good question because no one really knows the answer to the question exactly. We know that there are androgen receptors in the nucleus of the cell. So most receptors, like protein receptors for insulin and growth hormone and all those other IGF-1, they're all on the outside of the cell. That's called cytoplasmic receptors. The steroidal receptors are on the inside of the cell, on the DNA themselves, inside the nucleus of the cell. And the way the androgens bind to the receptors is a little different for all the compounds. It's the same receptor, but they kind of fit into the lock a little differently, all of them. So that given the configuration that they're binding to on the receptor site, and this is how they think it works, they'll stimulate a slightly different reaction in the body. That's why if you take Deca and if you take Trenbolone, they're going to lock into two different portions of the androgen receptor, and they can synergize each other, which means amplify each other. And that's why we talk about stacking anabolics, because they're working together to produce a bigger result than if you had one or the other. So you're not getting one or the other binding. You're getting both of them binding to the androgen receptor, and you're creating a synergistic or effect. Now, how does the receptor know this? I don't know. The molecules are different in shape and configuration, Deca, Trenbolone, Primobolan, Winstrol, and they all seem to have a different way they attach and latch onto that androgen receptor. I wish I knew more, and I don't think anyone else really knows that much more than that. But if I could explain it better, I would. But that if you just look at it as a key and a lock, it's how the key fits into the configuration. But these different anabolics have different configurations. That testosterone obviously must fit, the most efficiently, and that's why, because that's what we produce naturally, and that's probably why it has the most profound effect on the cell. Because when you take testosterone, there's nothing stronger than testosterone that we know of, because of that. Because it probably attaches to that androgen receptor 100% of the way. And once again, there's some theory in here. We're guessing a lot, and I don't think anyone's proven any of these things, as far as I know. But if they're interested, it was a good question. And both of these questions, by the way, came from the Dave Palumbo Experience app members. And that's an app I offer. You download it from your iTunes store or your Android store. It's $29 per month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. You get access to all the writings I've ever done, all my videos in one place. All my protocols, off-season, pre-contest, my off-season cycles, pre-contest cycles. Everything's in that app in a very organized way to find. I answer everyone's questions in an open forum, so everyone sees everyone's questions and answers, which is a big learning experience. I do a Q&A video exclusively for the app members, so they get an extra Ask Dave every single week just for the app members, and we put up a workout every single week. It's very popular. I want to thank you guys for supporting it. I know we've been growing by about 20 people every single week almost. It's a big number of people we have on that app, but you know what? It's a great learning experience, and if you're really serious about bodybuilding and or coaching, you want to keep expanding your knowledge base, this is the way to do it, and it's very affordable. So thanks.
So again, those first two questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Now we take questions from our Facebook page and Instagram page. If you're not already following us on Facebook, just go into the search bar, type in RXMuscle. On Instagram, official_RXMuscle. Let's go to Michael Moore. Have you ever known anybody who has dealt with spinal stenosis? If so, did they have surgery? I'm almost 70 years old. I've had a lot to do with this problem, getting a spinal epidural shot on Friday.
Yeah, unfortunately, my father had spinal stenosis, and he was in a lot of pain. And I think some of the pain that he was in his mind, because as he started losing his memory later in life, the pain wasn't so bad. He didn't need quite as much pain medication. But I understand it's definitely debilitating. Sometimes you have tingling in the limbs, because what's happening is where the spinal nerves come out of the spinal cord, the openings are restricted, and so they can't get through. So they're being pressed on these nerves. And a lot of times it's painful. A lot of people get numbness in certain body parts. And it seemed like the epidurals did a lot to help my dad. I know that for a fact, that he got some good relief out of it. And you know what the truth is? Even if I think they would get him every 3 months. And it doesn't matter. When you get to that point where it's pain and it's changing your personality, just go get them every 3 months if that's what you need. It's not a big deal. You know what I mean? They're pretty local acting, which is good. So it means it's not going to get systematized where you're going to have like a lot of corticosteroid, atrophy and stuff like that. It's not going to affect the rest of your body. I haven't seen or really talked to too many people who've gotten stem cells regarding that. I'm going to Mexico in a few weeks with Armand Adibi, and we're going to be doing stem cell treatments down there, IV stem cells, and also he's going to be getting some in his neck. So, and I'm going to get some in like a couple joints as well. And we're gonna regenerate a little bit. And I'll let you know, and he can let you know how that works. So that might be a future potential therapy that you can go for. I know I've sent Ronnie Coleman down to this very same clinic. He's been going every 6 months probably for the last couple of years, and he seems to get a lot of relief out of it as well. One of the great things about stem cells is they're tremendously anti-inflammatory. So in your situation, that might work out well. I don't know, what your finances are, and I don't know how affordable it will be, but it's something to definitely look into, especially if it'll give you a whole year's worth of relief. It might be worth it, or more than that, moving forward. But yeah, I would just go with the epidural. So now that's probably the best way to get yourself out of pain and discomfort.
Carlos Fit NYC, Dorian Yates made a comment saying wide grip pull downs are not a good exercise. He prefers reverse pull downs. Your thoughts?
I've heard Dorian talk extensively about his thoughts on pull downs. And, I always felt the same thing. When you go, we always were taught the wider you go, the wider you're going to make your back. But that's not really the case, because just because your hands are wide doesn't mean you're going to make your lats come out more. As a matter of fact, the wider away your hands are apart, the less strong you are, because you're coming away from your body. The closer to your body you are, the stronger you're going to be. So Dorian Yates' philosophy is that if you're stronger and you can activate the muscle, the lats more, because you're able to pull more weight with good form, then you're going to get more out of the exercise. And I'm of the same belief. Now, I know he likes to do reverse. I tend to like to go over. I think there's too much bicep activation in this, and I'm always afraid I'm going to tear a bicep. So I usually just go overhand, and I'll change my grips from like here. Sometimes I go a little lower, sometimes here. Sometimes I'll get the handle that where it's actually facing each other and pulling down. But I'm always at that shoulder width, type of spacing, because I think once you come away from your body, I agree with him, you get weaker. So that's not what we're looking for. We're not looking we want to pull as much weight as possible. So whether you do underhand or overhand, I don't think it matters. The key is don't try to go too wide, or you're going to limit your body's ability to pull that weight down. And another thing I always do is when I do any kind of back movements, I use like grippers. Now, you can get Versa grippers. I actually sell a pair of grippers called Jumbo Palumbo grippers on my DavePalumbo.com website. They're very popular. We sell a lot of those. They're a lot cheaper than the Versas, and they accomplish the same thing. It's kind of like it Velcros around your wrist. It's got a flap, and you just flap it around and you hold it. It's so easy. Straps are a pain in the neck. They rip all the time. So I kind of gave up on those years ago.
Let's go to Fred Hughes. I found out that nandrolone and Masteron were produced to do the same thing in the way that they combat estrogen. They chose Masteron in comparison in terms of virility, less the nandrolone more in females. Just both did similar things to combat estrogen.
One more time, Sid.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out what exactly the question is. Because he's basically making a statement about that nandrolone and Masteron produced to do the same thing, but I guess they differ in virility in females. Just they did the same things to combat estrogen. I guess the question would be then, which one would you recommend for males?
For males to do what, though?
Combat estrogen.
Oh, well, it's important to understand that women produce their estrogen from their ovaries. Men don't have ovaries. We produce estrogen from aromatization of testosterone, meaning that testosterone converts to estrogen. So the only way to stop estrogen production in a man would be to block the aromatase enzyme that converts that testosterone to estrogen. That's why we take drugs like Arimidex, Femara, Aromacin. Those are the three most popular aromatase inhibitors. And, given how much estrogen you're producing in your body would be determined what the dosages that you'd be using of those things. Usually, if you're on a full-blown cycle, a 0.5 milligram to 1 milligram of Arimidex every day usually works really well pre-contest. Off-season, a lot of times we'll go every other day with it, because a little bit of extra estrogen sometimes actually helps you grow better. So now in women, because they produce estrogen directly from the ovaries, there is no aromatization, or if there is, it's minute. from, their small amount of testosterone they produce in their body. So 99% of their estrogen is coming from their ovaries. The only way to block that estrogen would be to block the estrogen receptor, okay? Because giving them an aromatase inhibitor is not going to do anything. They're going to still have all that estrogen around. So you got to block the receptor. And for that, we use Nolvadex 99% of the time, 10 milligrams every 12 hours. It's a 12-hour pill. So that's the differentiation between men and women. Women who are postmenopausal, who are not producing estrogen, who have very, very low estrogen production, sometimes benefit from taking an aromatase inhibitor. But even in that case, their estrogen production is usually so small that you wouldn't want to eliminate the small amount that they actually have in their body.
Let's go to Nick Delio. Is Victor Conte's ZMA product a performance enhancer?
Technically, anything can be considered a performance enhancer. There's no drugs in there or anything like that. It's just minerals, So does it enhance performance? I don't know. I guess if you're deficient in magnesium, it might make you feel better and it might help you sleep better. But no, it's not. There's no drugs in there that are illegal or anything like that are doing anything spectacular. He just happened to have trademarked that combination of that product, and a lot of people use his patented formula in their vitamin mixes, and so they have to give him credit. They have to pay him a royalty for that. But there's nothing like drug related in there. No.
Let's go to Dodd's Bra. I've been in a calorie deficit for 13 weeks, gradually continue to drop calories, increase movement when my weight plateaus. I'm at a point now where I'm extremely fatigued, can't sleep properly, and still have 9 weeks on my cut that I want to commit to. Would you suggest going on a 1 to 2 week diet break back to maintenance calories? And will this benefit me in the long run? Performance at the gym has also been dropping slightly.
Read the first sentence again.
He's been in a caloric deficit for 13 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the problem. The term caloric deficit. I hate that word. Okay. I like the word energy deficit better because caloric implies that it doesn't matter what you're eating. It's just that you figured out you think you figured out how many calories you eat a day and you've just gone below that. If that is the case, then you're not calculating, your diet properly, because it's all about the macronutrient ratio. In other words, how many grams of carbs, how many grams of fat, how many grams of protein you're taking. That's the important numbers. It doesn't matter what they add up to caloric wise. So if you're eating, a certain amount of protein, a certain amount of fat, and a certain amount of carbs, and you're not losing weight anymore, and you feel like you're plateauing, then you got to change the macronutrient ratios around. Now if you're already very low, in carbs and fat and protein, you might have to increase calories. If you're not, and you're still eating a decent amount of carbs, you got to cut them back. So it's hard for me to make any suggestions because you really didn't give me a lot of data as to what you're eating and stuff like that. But do you need to take a 2-week break in the middle of your diet? No, probably not. Do you need to maybe take a day or two off from the gym because you're a little overtrained? Yeah, that might be something that you might need to do if you're that burnt out and you're dreading going to the gym. But a lot of people think hit that point where in the diet where they're really suffering a lot and they feel like shit. And it might not be a week or two out. You could be 6 weeks out from a show, and that's normal. And they want an excuse to take the pain away. And I'm sorry. At the end of the day, sometimes you have to suffer through that. Those days are the days that really will make or break you. The people that fold under those situations are the ones that don't make it and don't show up at the best shape, and the ones that can suck it up and get through it and wake up and do it again the next day. Those are the ones who get success. Now, obviously, if you tell me, we haven't answered this question because, obviously this is a static question, but if you haven't taken a day off in 2 weeks and you've been training with weights every single day, you could be overtrained. In that case, taking 2 days off would be warranted. But if you've been doing things the right way and taking days off and not overdoing it, then you might just be feeling crappy and you might have to just change around the macros a little bit.
I'll save this one to the end. Can you please tell me what anti-estrogen to take and dosage for 300 mg a week of test, not used for a long time and was prone to gyno?
Yeah, normally I would say you probably don't need any, but if you are very prone to gyno and you're noticing, soreness in the nipples, then you probably need something. You're not really taking a lot of testosterone. I would probably err on the side of caution and maybe do like a 0.5 milligram of Arimidex 3 times a week to start and see if that solves the problem. I'm thinking that a 0.5 milligram every day is going to be too much, and it's going to shut all your estrogen production down. And then you're going to feel like crap. You're going to be flat in the gym. You're not going to have a sex drive, and you're not going to be happy about that. So I would start with like a 0.5 milligram 2 to 3 times a week and see how that works, and then go from there. And, it might not hurt to get your estrogen levels checked too, to see what they are. Sometimes, they're not quite as high as you think they are, but, you just might be very sensitive in that nipple area,
Dwayne B, thoughts on CJC 1295 and IGF-1 LR3 peptides for helping out recovery and injuries?
Yeah, the CJC is a growth hormone releasing peptide. So it basically stimulates your pituitary gland to release growth hormone. The problem with those is some people respond really well to them and some people don't, because after all, it's a signal. Is the signal actually making your pituitary produce GH or not? And some people it will and some people it won't. So it's not that consistent. Taking IGF-1, assuming it's real, is going to give you a direct muscle building effect, because that's the hormone that's actually repairing muscle. CJC would stimulate GH release, which would then have to go to the liver and stimulate IGF release to get the healing to get the recovery process going. Taking the IGF-1 directly is a little bit more potent. Now, the problem with not taking IGF-1 is if you take too much or you take it for too many days consecutively, it stops working. So the IGF-1 receptors shut down. So you got less is better, 10 to 20 micrograms a day, no more than 4 weeks in a row, and then take a 2-week break, and then you can go back to it again. That seems to be the best protocol.
I know we've talked about this before, and you've talked about this, I guess, from the dangers of walking around barefoot in a gym. The question is about leg pressing or squatting without shoes on. Are there, or if you can, I know we've talked about the disadvantages. Do you see any advantages to squatting or leg pressing without shoes on?
No. The only reason why powerlifters don't wear shoes, and I've talked about this before, is because they're closer to the ground. And if their feet are closer to the ground, they don't have to pull the weight on the deadlift off the ground as far of a distance. Because if your shoe is about an inch with a heel on it, now you can get an inch closer to the ground. You're not pulling it's an easier pull, and that's the only reason they do it. Okay, no, I don't think anyone in their right mind trains with no shoes on. Number one, if you drop a weight on your toe, you're going to break it. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you need support. Okay, when you have a lot of weight on your back or you're deadlifting a lot of weight, those arches I don't care if you have a great arch or not. I have no arches, but even if you have a great arch, under that kind of weight, they flatten out. So you want a shoe that is going to support that arch, so that you're pulling from the right muscles. Because if the configuration or the shape of your foot changes, okay, from this to this while you're actually lifting because of the weight, because you have no support on your foot, you're using the wrong muscles in your leg and your back, and you're going to invariably tweak something that you shouldn't be tweaking. So always wear a good motion-controlled shoe in the gym. I've seen people wear work boots, and those are, Scott, news to you, those are better than some of the crappy no support shoes that I see out there. So I also recommend that a lot of people get custom-made orthotic inserts into their shoes as well, so they can correct whatever arch deficit that they do have. Because most bodybuilders have an arch deficit just because we lift so heavy. So something to consider.
Kind of a dark one here, but maybe a dose of reality that you could offer to the audience at hand. Do you think there will be a spike in fatalities in coming years due to, quote, mail order gear? Back when I had magic beans, everything was real. Now you have to be nuts to take some of the stuff that I see people jabbing.
It's an interesting question, because you would think that using underground gear would probably cause more problems, because and acutely short term they might, because who knows if they're sterile, you could get infections from the stuff, right? There could be impurities in there. But long term, they're probably, most of them are not dosed accurately anyway. They might be and no one's overdosing. Most people are underdosing. So maybe long term, people won't be having as bad of effects because they're using less gear than they really think they're using. Now, there are some people that use insane amounts of gear anyway. And so even if they are a little underdosed, they're still using way more than they should be. So I don't know if we're going to see more fatalities, but I think we're going to continue to see people that have health issues the longer they're on gear, for sure. And like I said, I think in the short run, I think it's more dangerous. And what bothers me the most is that a lot of the gear is not what it says it is. They might say it's Anavar and it's actually Dianabol. They might say it's Primabol and it's a lot of times it's test propionate. I feel bad for the women that are being unfortunately ruined because of that. And I tell every woman out there, and I'll say it here again a million times, buy the Roy test kits on my DavePalumbo.com website. Bill Llewellyn makes them. They're a great tester. It'll tell you what the drugs are in the stuff that you're using. Someone told me today, I was talking to them, and they said, "Oh, my very, very dear friend so-and-so gets it for me. He's such a great guy." I'm like, I'm sure he is, but he doesn't know. He doesn't know who made the stuff. He's just buying it. He's assuming it's real. But if he doesn't test it, or if you don't test it, you're not going to know what you're using. So don't trust I don't care if the president of the United States gives it to you and says, "Here, this stuff's good." Test it. If it's not coming from a pharmacy, test it. That's the best advice I can give you, because you don't want to have side effects that are going to ruin essentially how you look down the road.
We'll take one more question. Last year, obviously, was your first time at the Olympia in quite some time. JBH wants to know if you want to just put it on record now. Will you be at the Olympia this year? And what can, I guess I'll add to that. Obviously, this past weekend, we were with the Whack Pack down in Alabama.
Yeah.
What can RXMuscle fans expect to see in October at the Olympia in terms of our coverage, in terms of who we might be bringing along with us?
Yeah. I think we'll see more. I'll be there definitely, but I think we'll see more RXMuscle people there, because I know I've talked to a lot of guys that are going. I know Armand is going. Larry always goes. He was there last year. I'll be there. Obviously, you'll be there. Chris is going to go. I think Romano's definitely going this year. So there'll definitely be a lot. Will Greg Valentino be? Oh, and Lee is going to be there too, because he's going to be with the company. Will Jimmy the Bull and Greg be there? More than likely not, because they won't fly themselves in. We had to bribe them to get them to Alabama. So, but I think it'll be a bigger crew than normal, and I'm sure, and I think probably Mr. G will probably go too. So we'll probably have we can definitely plan some fun stuff, like some meals out and some kooky stuff around Vegas, because we haven't been in Vegas in a while. So I think you could expect to see more fun stuff than we've done in the past, because we'll have a bigger crew there. And, I might even get there a couple days early if I have the ability to do that, because I know my good friend Dominic Matasio has offered to let me stay at his house for a couple days and chill. And he has a really big house and an extra car. So that was a nice offer by him. So I might take him up on that. And we'll definitely have a bunch of stuff planned this year that we haven't done in previous years for sure.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our show segments. Of course, everything that we have from this past weekend down in Alabama. And it seems really random when I say Alabama, but just I did want to give a special thanks to Michelle, who brought us all down there for the Body B1 Classic. Friday night was a seminar, and then, of course, the next day was the show, NPC and IFBB. It's the only IFBB Pro show in the state of Alabama, and I'm thankful that she gave me the opportunity to MC the pro portion of the event. And it was great to see, front row, you have Dave, you have Lee, you have Romano, Greg, Jimmy, Mr. G, all coming out supporting the show, supporting bodybuilding. So that was a really cool moment. And again, we're very thankful to Michelle. She absolutely rolled out the red carpet for us. It was a lot of fun. And if she will allow us, and if the state of Alabama will allow us back in next year, we will be happy to be back next year. But again, if you haven't already checked out our coverage, I say coverage, some of the wackiness, it's on the channel right now. Of course, all new episode of After Hours, as well as Heavy Muscle Radio, a full recap of this past weekend's Flex Pro in Milan, Italy, which saw Beiruz Tabani punch his third ticket to the Olympia. And we're hopeful that this time he will actually be able to make it to Las Vegas to compete against some of the best in the world. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. Thank you for watching.